Splatoon Raiders is Nintendo asking, what if Salmon Run was just the entire game? Which is exactly what I wanted. It's a big swing from the formula, and Splatoon has set a really high bar. Splatoon 1 has invented something new, Splatoon 2 refined it, Splatoon 3 went big, and now Raiders just goes in a completely different direction, which makes comparing it to the rest of the series kind of unfair, so I'm not going to review it normally. Instead, I'm going to judge it based off of the 5 things I think make Splatoon. The gameplay, the music, the lore, the characters, and the content. Not just whether Raiders does them well on its own, but whether it does them as well as the best the series has to offer. Each one getting us closer to answering the big question, can Splatoon Raiders compete with the best of Splatoon? It is a close call, so let's find out. Gameplay is the reason Splatoon became one of Nintendo's biggest franchises. Every game has made small changes, but they've all built on the same foundation. You shoot ink in kid form, you swim through it in squid form, and you use gyro controls to get a level of precision unheard of for a controller. Raiders keeps all of that. Mechanically, it still feels exactly like Splatoon. Crazy, I know. There's just one fairly minor difference. Splatoon is a competitive multiplayer shooter, while Raiders is a single-player looter shooter where you hop from island to island, scavenge equipment, and slaughter increasingly large populations of fish. So, you know, basically the same game. The basic loop is simple. You travel from island to island on a raft, fight through hordes of salmonids, collect treasure and equipment, and gradually become powerful enough to take on harder missions. Because the crew is stranded and has to work with whatever they can find, all of the familiar Splatoon weapons have been rebuilt using recycled materials, and these designs are amazing. They're immediately recognizable, but they also look like something a group of people could actually cobble together while trapped in the middle of the ocean. The weapons may look different, but the biggest mechanical addition is the 3 ink tanks: speed, power, and tactics. Each one comes with its own set of gadgets and encourages a slightly different approach to combat. Although every approach eventually becomes throwing spinning blades at the problem. You have spinning blades, larger spinning blades, and for the players who thought the first 2 options were a little too subtle, even more spinning blades. Deep Cut also joins you on your expeditions, with one of the members piloting a small bot every mission. The bot acts as a mobile turret. It helps you reach distant platforms with a bot jump and can keep you suspended in the air while you attack. It starts as a useful companion, but once you begin upgrading your own gadgets, the combat completely changes. At the beginning of the game, you're just scavenging equipment and carefully fighting through the salmonids. By the end of the game, you are the danger. I mean, I have this turret that shoots blaster rounds, has a sprinkler on it for close range damage, it explodes when I deploy it, and it explodes when it's done. I call it the fuck you turret, and I get 2 of them. That escalation is what makes Raiders work so well as a looter shooter. Your weapons and gadgets begin fairly weak, but every upgrade makes you faster, stronger, or considerably more dangerous to anything with gills. Eventually, I had spinning blades that damage and set enemies on fire, a hatchet capable of killing boss salmonids in 1 hit, and a gun made from virgin olive oil that could shred through almost anything. This game slowly stops being, oh no, we're stranded and we need to find a way home, and becomes, I'm going to kill every last one of you dirty salmonids because I can. The levels give you plenty of opportunities to test all of this. There are 4 main types: traditional stages where you fight your way towards a crystal, smaller sandbox areas, gadget-focused dungeons, and longer raids that string together multiple Salmon Run style encounters before ending with a boss. The normal and sandbox stages also contain hidden scrolls, although most of them are easy enough to find that exploration never becomes much of an obstacle. The variety keeps the campaign moving, but not every level works. Dashes of Spice made me feel like I couldn't jump, Zessy's speed menu was miserable, and some missions become harder when you bring the wrong equipment. I think the speed tank was the issue. I never liked the speed tank. The game also expects you to replay stages with all 3 ink tanks if you want to fully complete them. The different gadgets do change how you approach a level, but playing the same mission 3 times can still feel like padding. Thankfully, the difficulty itself scales surprisingly well. As my equipment became more ridiculous, the salmonids became stronger and more numerous. I rarely felt completely stuck, but the game also never became so easy that my upgrades felt pointless. By the end, there were so many gadgets, explosions, enemies, and flying objects on screen that I could barely tell what was happening. And honestly, I couldn't tell you what was going on while I was playing the game. I remember sitting there and thinking, man, I have no idea what's happening on screen. But I was still having fun. Raiders doesn't improve Splatoon by completely reinventing its shooting or movement. Instead, it takes the mechanics the series has spent years refining and places them in the most satisfying progression loop yet. I wanted to clear every island, find better equipment, upgrade every gadget, and immediately start New Game Plus once the credits rolled. So when it comes to gameplay, Raiders can absolutely compete with the best games in the series. It just gets there by turning Splatoon into something completely different. But if you've been enjoying this very thorough analysis of Splatoon Raiders, you should consider subscribing. I'm currently working on a full retrospective, so there's going to be more Splatoon soon. But what would Splatoon even be without people gargling water over a rock beat? I am of course talking about the Splatoon soundtrack has always been all over the place. In a good way. Rock, pop, ska, reggae, electronic music, and whatever genre you would use to describe Octopus's burping. But despite all that variety, most Splatoon music is loud, upbeat, and designed to get you moving. Except for Salmon Run. Salmon Run's music is specifically designed to make you feel like you've walked directly into a war zone. That music is created by Salmonids for Salmonid. It's frantic, aggressive, and often structured like a military march. So, is it really surprising that a game entirely about invading Salmonid territory sounds like Salmon Run? That's all Raiders is. Most of the music shares the same strange rhythms and harsh sounds associated with Omega 3. But what I'm especially happy about is that Omega 3 isn't the only Salmonid band anymore. Raiders introduces groups like DHA, DJ Spinsalt, and Purines. Not much is known about them yet, so I'm assuming that everyone is a Salmon, but they all expand on the same musical identity. They sound related without every track feeling completely identical. There is a problem though. People don't like the music in Raiders, and I can understand why. It's just not as catchy as a normal Splatoon soundtrack. There's no upbeat rock hooks, and some of the songs don't even use comment time. At that point, don't even show me the song. But also, what were people expecting? These are Salmonists. Their whole culture revolves around being honorable warriors, dying on the battlefield, and proving that they are stronger than everyone around them. What, did you want them to sing Taylor Swift? The music is supposed to sound hostile and unfamiliar because you're invading their home. These songs aren't concerned with what's popular, fashionable, or easy to sing along with. They sound like they were created by a culture that treats every worship like it's the final stand. Salmon Run's music has never been that popular to begin with, and I mean it could be because of the controversial member, the faithful servant of the true Salmon Emperor Hizunamasu. I can understand if it's because of the faithful servant of the true Salmon Emperor Hizunamasu. Personally though, I really enjoy the soundtrack. The level themes fit the atmosphere, the rap music gives you a necessary break in between missions, and Big Man's musical routine is perfect because obviously Big Man is perfect. And for anyone who actually misses the more traditional Splatoon songs, the finale absolutely delivers. I'm not gonna play it here because, you know, spoilers, but it feels much closer to the more massive, energetic songs you would expect from Splatoon. I don't think Raiders has the best soundtrack in the series. It doesn't have as many songs that I immediately add to a playlist, and its style may start to blend together if you already dislike Salmon Run music. But it may be one of the most fitting soundtracks Splatoon has ever had. Every song reinforces the culture, atmosphere, and growing dangers of the Salmonids. So while Raiders may not beat Splatoon at its own musical game, it understands exactly what this particular game should sound like. But if the music teaches us anything, it's that Salmonid culture is a lot more complicated than we take it for. Almost as complicated as the lore. Alright, bear with me, because Splatoon lore can take up to 5 hours to explain, and I'm going to try to do it in about 27 seconds. Humanity destroyed itself, but before dying underground, they covered their homes in crystals that absorbed all their thoughts and emotions. Those crystals eventually fell into the ocean, convinced marine life they needed to walk on land. A few thousand years later, the Great Turf War happened. 100 years after that, Splatoon 1 happened. Then 2 years later, the in-universe band Squid Squad broke up. This is very important. I need you to trust me on this. Meanwhile, humanity launched several animals into space, but they all died except for one bear. The bear returned to Earth, created an ooze that turns things into mammals, and needed golden eggs to produce it. So he hired teenagers to repeatedly invade Salmonid territory and steal the unborn children, thus inventing part-time employment. That is Splatoon lore. The important part is that despite Salmon Run being around since Splatoon 2, we barely understood the Salmonids themselves. We knew they had a warrior culture, believed deeply in the cycle of life and death, and occasionally launched massive invasions foretold by 7 rings appearing in the sky. But most of what we knew came from observing them while actively stealing from them. Raiders finally gave the Salmonids an entire game to themselves, so expectations were high. If Splatoon was going to send us into their homeland, I wanted to learn what their civilization actually looked like before I reduce it to spare weapon parts. And the game delivers that information in a really smart way. As you defeat each Salmonid, you unlock additional facts about its behavior and biology. That means the bestiary gradually becomes more detailed the longer you play, rewarding you for engaging with the enemies instead of dumping every explanation on you at once. Then there are the Briny Scrolls, which cover everything from the history of the Spiralite Islands to Salmonid biology, Deep Cut's past, and the people who came to these islands before us. They even give us an entire Salmonid evolutionary tree, which raises a big question of, if the Salmonids had an advanced society, why are they now attacking me with frying pans? Raiders leaves enough gaps for you to form your own theories. The Spiralite Islands are filled with ancient ruins, strange crystals, and evidence of a history that goes back much further than Deep Cut's expedition. My theory is that prolonged exposure to Spiralite changes the Salmonids over time. Maybe it made them stronger while gradually stripping away whatever they had built before. I haven't found every Briny Scroll yet, so I could be completely wrong. But until proven otherwise, my official theory is that the Salmonids discovered a magical crack rock and their entire civilization collapsed. What matters is that Raiders finally makes the Salmonids feel more than an endless supply of enemies and golden eggs. They have distinct biology, music, traditions, history, and a civilization whose remains shape the entire game. It doesn't explain every mystery, and I'm glad it doesn't, but it gives us more meaningful Salmonid lore than the rest of the series combined, so Raiders can compete with Splatoon's best lore. It takes a group we spent years fighting and finally asked us to understand what they were protecting. And it also gives us more history for Deep Cut themselves, which is a fantastic transition to the next chapter. Every Splatoon game introduces a new group of idols, and they are almost never just musicians. Some are secret agents, some get trapped inside underground mind-erasing test facilities, some fight in an immortal bear in space. But in their first game, most of them don't actually give much time to be characters. Callie and Marie are heavily involved in Splatoon's story, even if you don't know it immediately, but Pearl and Marina just don't appear in Splatoon 2's main campaign. It wasn't until Octo Expansion that we got to spend time with them, see their personalities bounce off each other, and learn why they became so close. So then you would think that Nintendo would learn their lesson and make the next group of idols central to the story. No, they did it again! Deep Cut technically appears throughout Splatoon 3's campaign, but mostly as villains who show up, insult you, fight, and then leave. You become friends at the end, and their motivation for being treasure hunters is genuinely great. They hunt for treasure because Splatsville is struggling and they want to use what they find to support their home. It shows how deeply they care about their community, but the game barely gives that idea time to breathe. Then the DLC side order gave them actually nothing. So Raiders has a lot of work if they want me to care about these 3 as much as the other idols. And by God, they do. Raiders has a much smaller cast, which means Deep Cut finally gets room to be more than boss fights and news presenters. They travel with you, talk throughout the story, argue with each other, celebrate discoveries, and actually feel like members of your expedition. One of them also pilots the bot during the mission, so they're not just disembodied voices telling you that you're doing a great job, they're physically there, fighting alongside you and helping you move throughout the level. That alone makes them feel more like friends than they ever did in Splatoon 3. But the best part is that the game rewards you for spending time with each member. They'll pull you aside and tell you about their childhood, their family, or side business that they run when they aren't performing or raiding ancient ruins. And I don't care if this counts as a spoiler or not, but Big Man is an influencer and I love him so much more now. I mean, look at these thumbnails. I just wish I could collab with him. Yeah, I can't understand a word you're saying. Raiders does a fantastic job with Deep Cut. Unfortunately, it has the opposite problem with the most important character of the game, You. Splatoon's playable characters has always been blank slates, but that's the point. You choose their species, hairstyle, clothes, and overall look. They may not have a written personality, but they feel like your place in the Splatoon universe. And I could not make a character I liked in Raiders. I don't like any of the new Inkling or Octoling hairstyles, not even the messy default hairstyle that everyone apparently loves. And I get it. I understand that they are trapped on a group of deserted islands. It's not like there's a salon next door. But they could have packed a comb or something. The bigger problem is the clothing system. Instead of choosing a hat, shirt, and shoes separately, you select an entire preset outfit. That seriously limits how much you can personalize your character. And I didn't like most of the available outfits anyways, especially the ones where one sleeve is inexplicably longer than the other. I eventually found one outfit that looked decent and wore it for the whole game. So Raiders handles its characters in two completely different ways. It gives Deep Cut the time, personality, and backstory they desperately needed. By the end, they finally felt like a real friend group, but it also gives the player fewer ways to express themselves than the mainline games, which is a strange step backwards when your character is the person you'll spend the entire adventure looking at. So can Raiders compete with the best character writing in Splatoon? When it comes to Deep Cut, absolutely. This is easily their best appearance. When it comes to the playable character though, the rest of the series still does it better. But I can forgive some terrible sleeves as long as Raiders gives me enough game. The mainline Splatoon games gives you a ridiculous number of ways to play. You have the campaign, turf war, ranked mode, salmon run, and most importantly, the card game. You can never forget the card game. Raiders, meanwhile, is built almost entirely around one central idea. Fight salmonids, get stronger, fight stronger salmonids. So then that's it. Raiders loses because it can't compete with a game with table turf battle. Raiders definitely has less variety than the mainline games. There's no competitive multiplayer, no separate side modes aside from some arcade games, and nothing that completely changes the type of game you're playing. Even with 4 different stage structures, you're still spending almost all of your time fighting hordes of salmonids. But that doesn't mean the game runs out of things to do. Most stages can be replayed on a higher, spicier difficulty, which gives you stronger enemies to test your increasingly ridiculous weapons against. And the game introduces upgraded variants of familiar salmonids. There are taller stingers, larger steelheads, scrappers built like tanks, and completely new enemies like salty tongues, smokers, and whatever the hell that is. The islands also keep the adventure visually varied. You move through tropical beaches, volcanic areas, frozen mountains, ancient ruins, and several environments that feel completely different despite sharing the same basic combat loop. Then after beating the story, you get even spicier levels to carry your powerful equipment into harder versions of the campaign. That's where the looter-shooter structure really pays off. The game gives you all these overpowered weapons that actually provide stronger enemies and higher difficulties, so you have a reason to use them. Raiders doesn't have as many modes as the mainline games, it doesn't even come close, but it gets an impressive amount of mileage out of its one central loop. So when it comes to variety, the other games do it better. When it comes to replayability though, it does much better than I expected. So after all of that, can Splatoon Raiders compete with the best of Splatoon? And honestly, it's still just a weird question because Raiders is a spin-off. It's like comparing Mario Bros. Wonder to Mario Super Sluggers. Mostly because Super Sluggers would win, it's a better game. Most Nintendo spin-offs take a familiar character and place them into a completely different genre. Mario drives cars, plays baseball, and occasionally develops a gambling problem.
Come here, fishy fishy.
Zelda has Hyrule Warriors, even Metroid got a pinball game. Without their characters, a lot of those games would be barely recognized as part of the same series. Raiders is different. It still controls like Splatoon. It still revolves around ink, movement, weapons, music, strange sea creatures, and a world with an alarming amount of hidden history. It doesn't abandon what Splatoon is. It takes one part of Splatoon and asks whether it can support an entire game, and somehow it can. The gameplay is some of the most satisfying in the series. The music fits the salmonids even if it won't appeal to everyone. The lore completely changes how we understand them. Deep Cut finally gets the characterizations they deserve. The only area where Raiders clearly falls behind is variety. There simply isn't as much to do there as in the mainline games. Well, what it does have is it is polished, it is replayable, and it is ridiculously fun. I don't think Raiders replaces Splatoon 3, and and I don't think it needs to. It competes with the best of Splatoon by proving that the series can become something completely different without losing what made it special. So yes, Splatoon Raiders deserves to stand beside the mainline games, not because it does everything they do, but because it does something none of them have ever done before. And if you already own a Switch 2, I absolutely believe this is a game worth playing, but what do you guys think? Do you think Splatoon Raiders competes with the best of Splatoon? Let me know down in the comments, subscribe if you want more content like this, and now I stand here in silence as you click on another video. I don't know why you're still here, you gotta click on that video. Nothing happens at the end.